Portugal may be one of Europe's smaller countries, but its influence is nothing short of monumental. From its delicious culinary offerings to its pioneering spirit, Portugal is a place where history and modernity meet in the most captivating ways. Here's a deeper dive into what makes this Iberian gem truly extraordinary. 1. Portugal, one of Europe's oldest nations. Portugal isn't just one of the oldest nations in Europe. It's a testament to resilience and continuity. Established in 1143, Portugal's borders were finalized in the 13th century, making it one of the world's most enduring nation-states. Portugal's golden age began in 1415, when it launched voyages of exploration that reshaped global history. The Portuguese reached new continents, spreading their language and culture to places like Africa, India, Brazil, and East Timor, and establishing trade routes that connected the world. Despite its success, Portugal faced challenges. The 18th century brought educational reforms under the Marquis de Pombal, laying the foundation for public education. The 19th century saw economic crises and political instability, slowing progress. The 20th century was transformative. Portugal transitioned from monarchy to dictatorship under Antonio de Oliveira Salazar, who controlled education and limited modernization. But the Carnation Revolution of 1974 ended decades of authoritarian rule, paving the way for democracy and renewed investment in education and culture. Since joining the European Economic Community, EEC, in 1986, and adopting the euro in 1999, Portugal has embraced its role as a modern democratic state. Its membership in the Community of Portuguese-Speaking Countries, CPLP, reflects a commitment to fostering global cultural and economic ties. Today, Portugal continues to evolve, focusing on education, reducing school dropout rates, and building a knowledge-based economy that honors its rich history while looking to the future. 2 is the Lisbon earthquake of 1755, a tragedy that shaped history. On November 1st, 1755, disaster struck Lisbon, shaking the city to its core. A catastrophic earthquake, estimated at a magnitude of 8.5 to 9, devastated the Portuguese capital. The tremors began on All Saints' Day, catching thousands of people in churches and homes. Devastation in numbers. Over 60,000 lives were lost in Lisbon alone, with many more across the region. Entire neighborhoods were reduced to rubble. A deadly tsunami. The quake triggered a massive tsunami, with waves reaching up to 65 feet, inundating coastal areas and claiming thousands of lives. Widespread fires. The earthquake also ignited fires that raged for days, compounding the destruction and creating an apocalyptic scene. The disaster left an indelible mark on Portugal's history. But in the face of tragedy, the nation demonstrated incredible resilience. Rebuilding Lisbon. The Marquês de Pombal, Portugal's prime minister at the time, spearheaded the reconstruction of Lisbon with remarkable foresight. He introduced earthquake-resistant architecture, a revolutionary concept for the 18th century. The city was redesigned with wide avenues and open squares, giving rise to the iconic Baixa Pombalina district. Philosophical and scientific impact. The Lisbon earthquake also sent shockwaves through the intellectual world. Thinkers like Voltaire and Immanuel Kant debated the event, questioning divine providence and laying the groundwork for modern seismology. This tragedy transformed Lisbon into a symbol of resilience, showcasing the spirit of a nation determined to rebuild and innovate in the face of adversity. 3. Portugal's unique justice system. A maximum prison sentence of 25 years. In Portugal, no crime, regardless of severity, carries a prison sentence exceeding 25 years. According to the Portuguese Penal Code, this applies even in cases of multiple heinous crimes. Additionally, the death penalty was abolished in 1867, making Portugal one of the earliest countries to take this progressive step. Why a maximum sentence of 25 years? The rationale lies in Portugal's focus on rehabilitation. The justice system emphasizes reforming offenders and preparing them for reintegration into society. Life imprisonment is considered inhumane, reflecting a belief in the potential for individuals to change. This approach underscores Portugal's commitment to progressive values and a justice system rooted in compassion and reform. 4. Portugal, a pioneer in drug policy. Portugal made history in 2001 by becoming the first country to decriminalize all drugs, including substances like heroin and methamphetamine. What does decriminalization mean? Decriminalization, legalization. Drugs are still illegal, but possession of small amounts for personal use is not a criminal offense. Instead of jail time, individuals are referred to treatment programs or offered support services. Why decriminalize drugs? In the 1990s, Portugal faced a severe drug epidemic, coupled with an alarming rise in HIV/AIDS cases linked to needle sharing. Harsh penalties and incarceration weren't working. The government adopted a radical public health approach. Reduce stigma around addiction to encourage seeking help. Reallocate law enforcement to focus on drug trafficking networks instead of personal use. The results: reduced drug usage. Portugal now boasts some of the lowest drug usage rates in the European Union. Improved public health. Fewer drug-related deaths and HIV infections have been recorded since the policy change. Global recognition. Portugal's model has inspired other nations to reconsider punitive drug policies. 5. Portugal, the first country to abolish slavery. When discussing the history of slavery, Portugal's name might not immediately spring to mind, yet the country made a groundbreaking move in 1819 by abolishing slavery, an action taken 15 years before Britain. Why did Portugal abolish slavery so early? International pressure. Other European nations, driven by moral reform and shifting global attitudes, urged Portugal to end the practice. Portugal wanted to align with these movements to maintain its reputation and avoid conflicts. Internal advocacy. Moral and ethical concerns gained traction within Portuguese society, creating momentum for change. But Portugal didn't stop at ending slavery within its borders. The country went further, actively suppressing the slave trade in its colonies. This involved cracking down on illegal slave ships, enforcing anti-slavery laws in regions under Portuguese control. Though Portugal's history with slavery is complex, this bold move distinguished it as a leader in the abolition movement. 6. Portugal and Spain once divided the world. In 1494, Portugal and Spain made history by signing the Treaty of Tordesillas, an agreement to divide the world between them. How did this work? They drew an imaginary line along the 25°W meridian, roughly between Cape Verde and Cuba. Territories to the east of the line fell under Portugal's influence, while those to the west belonged to Spain. The treaty, backed by the Vatican, was designed to prevent conflict between the two great maritime powers. What was the result? Portugal gained control of lands like Brazil, parts of Africa, and Asia. Spain claimed most of the Americas. However, the rest of the world wasn't so impressed. Protestant nations like England and the Netherlands ignored the treaty, conducting their own explorations and colonizations. While the treaty marked an important milestone in Portuguese and Spanish history, it didn't dictate the global order for long. Thus, Europe's longest dictatorship, Portugal's Estado Novo. From 1926 to 1974, Portugal endured Europe's longest dictatorship, lasting 48 years. Key phases of the dictatorship. Military dictatorship, 1926 to 1933. A military coup established authoritarian rule. Estado Novo, 1933-1974. Antonio de Oliveira Salazar came to power, creating a corporatist regime steeped in nationalism and Catholic conservatism. Final years and decline, 1968-1974. Salazar's influence waned, but the regime persisted under Marcelo Caetano. Salazar's legacy. Salazar's government prioritized economic stability at the cost of social freedoms and modernization. Colonialism, maintaining control over African colonies, even as global decolonization movements gained momentum. 8. Portugal introduced tea to England. Let's go back to 1662, when Catherine of Braganza, a Portuguese princess, married King Charles II of England. Along with her royal entourage, Catherine brought a beloved drink from Portugal, tea. At the time, tea wasn't entirely unknown in England, but Catherine's personal love for it transformed tea from a rare luxury to a symbol of sophistication. The Queen's influence spread tea drinking habits to the English court, where it became a staple of aristocratic life. Imagine ladies in elaborate gowns sipping tea at gatherings, setting the stage for the British tradition of afternoon tea. Thanks to Catherine, what was once a Portuguese passion became a cornerstone of British culture, a delightful reminder of Portugal's subtle yet impactful contributions to global customs. A staggering number of Portuguese live abroad. Portugal holds the highest emigration rate in the European Union, With over 2 million Portuguese citizens living abroad, that's about 20% of the country's population. Why do so many Portuguese leave? Economic opportunities. Many emigrants left during challenging economic periods, especially between 2011 and 2014, when nearly 500,000 Portuguese workers sought better prospects abroad. Destinations. Countries like Luxembourg, France, and Brazil have become popular hubs for Portuguese communities. For instance, in Luxembourg, Portuguese residents make up an astounding 14.5% of the country's population. Including descendants, the number of people with Portuguese origins worldwide surpasses 5 million, nearly 40% of Portugal's current population. This diaspora highlights the adaptability and resilience of the Portuguese people, who have enriched societies across the globe while maintaining deep cultural ties to their homeland. 10. Portugal's famous tiles. Azulejos. Portugal's azulejos, tiles, are much more than decorative ceramics. They are a canvas for history, culture, and art. The origins. Introduced in the 13th century by the Arabs, azulejos became a prominent feature in Portuguese architecture during the reign of King Manuel III. The king was inspired by the vibrant tiles of Seville, leading to their widespread use in Portuguese palaces and churches. Blue and white designs. During the Age of Discoveries, blue and white tiles became fashionable, inspired by Chinese porcelain and Dutch aesthetics. These colours came to symbolise Portugal's maritime power and wealth, adorning everything from the cathedrals to humble homes. Craftsmanship. Creating azulejos involves a meticulous process, shaping and painting to the tiles by hand, glazing and firing them in a kiln to achieve their signature shine. Each tile tells a story, often depicting scenes from Portuguese history, religious themes, or pastoral landscapes. Preserving the tradition. Portugal is so dedicated to this art form that it has an entire museum in Lisbon, the National Tile Museum, which showcases azulejos dating back centuries. Today, these tiles remain an integral part of Portugal's urban charm, transforming streets and buildings into living works of art. The next time you wander through Portugal, take a moment to admire these exquisite tiles. Each one carries a piece of the country's soul, connecting the past to the present